The Capitol Hill security breach on January 6 was reported as an insurrection, a threat to our democracy, and an attempt to overturn the 2020 election. But even though President Trump had approved thousands of National Guard troops for his rally, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi did not use them, failing to provide adequate security as she should have. Of course, this didn't stop her from overreacting spectacularly, bringing in the Guard after the fact and ordering the installation of tall fencing topped with razor wire all around the Capitol area. President Trump was accused of inciting the rebellion, and he was even impeached for it, despite the fact there was no connection whatsoever between the people listening to his speech, in which he told people to peacefully and patriotically protest, as well as the breaching of the Capitol. The message to Trump supporters was loud and clear. We see you as a threat. Don't misunderstand, I've said from the first that it was stupid and wrong to get out of line and enter the Capitol that day, let alone to cause vandalism and attack Capitol Police. A woman was killed, but she was a Trump supporter shot by the Capitol Police. And those who participated in any way simply gave Biden's political team a priceless gift, an effective excuse to wrongly tag all Trump supporters as part of some rowdy mob that needed to be held in check. But really, what kind of an insurrection is it when not one firearm is confiscated? Not one. Were they seriously trying to overthrow the entire United States government with what? A few baseball bats and some flagpoles? The idea itself is ludicrous. If it was an attempt to overthrow the government, it was less organized and thought out as a Joe Biden speech. And now, with hundreds of cases clogging the courts in Washington, D.C., we're seeing that most of these deal with little more than trespassing. To be sure, some are going to be charged with more serious crimes, but many of the Trump supporters who walked into the Capitol building that day had no intention of breaking the law. They didn't even think they were. At some entrances, security was so lax that police were just letting them walk right in. In light of this, Politico ran a piece on Tuesday that it probably pained them to include. It was headlined, "Many Capitol Hill rioters unlikely to serve jail time." Then the subhead said this, "The cases could embarrass the Biden administration, which has portrayed the January 6th siege as a dire threat to democracy." Of course, they make up for having to tell this story by using a photo that confirms their view of Trump supporters, as it shows a few of the rowdiest. Can you believe it? They're holding American flags. That's certainly bound to trigger many of Politico's readers. The article's authors, Josh Gerstein and Kyle Cheney, break the sad news that D.C. prosecutors and federal district court are needing to dispense with a large number of low-level cases related to the Capitol breach, and that in recent days, judges, prosecutors, and defense attorneys have all indicated that they expect few of these MAGA tourists to face harsh sentences. One reason for this, quote, "Although prosecutors have loaded up their charging documents with language about the existential threat of the insurrection to the Republic, the actions of many of the individual rioters often boil down to trespassing," end quote. The Biden administration exaggerated the January 6th insurrection to such an extent, Biden himself said that it borders on sedition. It's going to be challenging for them to deal with the many light sentences likely to be handed down. Attorney General Merrick Garland has called the event a heinous attack that sought to disrupt a cornerstone of our democracy, the peaceful transfer of power to a newly elected government. Really? All they really wanted was a transparent vote count. As the Politico article reports, Justice Department prosecutors sent expectations sky high in early statements and court filings describing elaborate plots to murder lawmakers, descriptions that prosecutors have tempered as new details emerged. So what are they going to say when scores of people receive their verdict of guilty and guilty of trespassing, unlawful presence, disrupting official business, and nothing more sinister than that? You can tell they're in trouble politically when the narrative starts changing, especially when it goes to the subject of race, and that's already happening. Listen to this from the Politico story, and I quote, "The resolution of the more mundane cases present an acute question about equity, since most of the defendants are white, while misdemeanor charges are often a vexing problem for minority defendants in other cases," end quote. The discussion will become about that. You just watch. Of course, they'll also capitalize on the relatively small number of serious charges that stem from this, but those could take many months or even a year just to come to trial. In telling this story, Politico is also guilty of exaggerating what really happened that day. The article says, without any elaboration, that the Capitol riot left 5 people dead. The writers surely know that there was only one death conclusively associated with the invasion of the Capitol, and that was the unarmed woman and military veteran and Trump supporter who was shot by a Capitol Hill officer. They also cast blame on President Trump, writing that many rioters have said that they took Trump's own words as the inspiration. Maybe they did feel that way. The congressional baseball shooter drew inspiration from Bernie Sanders' words, but you won't see me blaming Sanders for that far, far worse crime. But we know the Capitol rioters didn't even hear President Trump's rally speech, and that Trump had not called for anything like what they did. The Justice Department has been exaggerating too. In fact, by video conference last week, District Judge Amit Mehta lit into the DOJ for granting media interviews and throwing around terms like seditious conspiracy, a very grave charge, when they haven't actually charged anyone with that crime. What this judge has to say about defendants' rights is music to the ears. The judge is considering a gag order, which is great, maybe should be done, because trying cases in the media, as we've been doing lately, sure does make me gag. Well, thanks for watching, and I hope you'll consider subscribing to the channel below, as well as clicking the notification bell. If you want more of my news analysis and commentary, sign up for my newsletter at MikeHuckabee.com. It is absolutely free. Check out our second channel, Huckabee's Jukebox, for some great entertainment, and be sure to check back here tomorrow for more videos. That's it for this edition of The Breakdown. I'm Mike Huckabee.